Turunanga o Ngai Tahu. I'm sure you are familiar with this process, so please give us your opening remarks and then do allow our many questions. Your submission is read. Thank you.
Thank you. We take it that our submission has been read, and we just want to make a series of comments. I understand we have 10 minutes to speak, so we'll try to make that less. Ngai Tahu has made it clear right throughout that we are not claiming ownership, and we do believe these assets should remain in the public ownership. But I do think we need to make some points clear about this, because what is not appreciated by some parties is that a good deal of Crown and local government infrastructure is underpinned by Crown legislation which allowed the acquisition and confiscation of Māori land for public infrastructure. Now, a good example of that, and we're not talking about the 19th century, this is clearly in the 20th century and 21st, the Christchurch sewage ponds is fundamentally located on land that our people owned and taken in 1956 under the 28 Public Works Act. Now, what that really means is that the tribe quite often, and with Māori groups right throughout the country, is our land is used for public assets. What was noted when the Crown took our land for the Christchurch Drainage Board is that there was a very clear comment that the value of that land would increase substantially over the £100 that we were meant to be paid. I should note that the tribunal was quite clear. None of our owners were consulted, and neither were the owners paid by the Christchurch Council. Now, the point to this is this happens and occurs right throughout the country, right throughout New Zealand, and we do not think it is unreasonable for these reasons that Māori are involved in co-governance in Three Waters, because we have to look after our basic assets and no one has cared for them. I did note the issue about democracy. Democracy is the rule of law that comes out of the Westminster system for the toleration of all peoples. Legislation and the legal system from the Westminster system is there to protect everyone. It is a matter of toleration. Now, that has clearly not happened either in the 19th century or 20th century for Māori assets. The best example of this in the 20th century is, of course, the township Tūrangi, which was simply taken off Māori, and Māori had no role in that township. Now, I do want to proceed next, having stated that we understand the Castalia report that has happened. No mention has been that Castalia made a report in 2017 that was fundamentally different from that given now. Neither has Castalia looked at the contributions that Māori make to infrastructure by the fact of externalities. We essentially carry this country by contributing our lands for public infrastructure. Now, in terms of the support for the Water Services entity, the Southern Water Services entity fits within the Ngai Tahu Takiwā via the Trent Act 1996. I think we need to say that what this does is that it allows us and local government within our takiwā to work carefully. The systems are streamlined, and we can commit to making this, particularly with the RRG appointments and the management and operation of new governance arrangements. I think this is an important point to make because we believe the Te Tauihu tribes have overstated their case. This is a matter of legislation. The Ngai Tahu Act confirmed our boundary in 1996. The Settlement Act in 1998 gives us rangatiratanga within our territory. This act has never been repeated again with any other tribe. The Crown's recognition of our rangatiratanga is an active sentence. It says, the Crown recognises Ngai Tahu as the tangata whenua of and is holding rangatiratanga within the takiwā of Ngai Tahu. Now, the Te Tauihu tribes have simply overstated their case because, despite the findings of the Waitangi Tribunal and the findings of the High Court previously, 2 decades ago, These tribes negotiated with the Crown. There is nothing in their Settlement Act that gives them rangatiratanga in our area. And in fact, the most you get out of their settlement statement is that Rangatane has rights and interests. Nothing else is mentioned in our area. Rights and interests are a fundamental feature of all communities throughout New Zealand. And towards this, Ngai Tahu committed to resolving this back in 2010 and 2012 with these tribes. Arrangements were made and signed by all tribal groups where their interests would be taken care of. The next issue I need to go to, having said this, their settlement acts are ultimately the bedrock of everything we do. They do not mention their boundaries. They do not mention anything other than rights and interests. They have no rangatiratanga. The Crown's relationship with Ngai Tahu is quite clear on our takiwā and our rangatiratanga. In terms of the finances, I just want to go, because we haven't got long, the tribe's contribution to the South Island entity, we are quite prepared to commit to this, to make it work. But there is clearly an inequity in our contribution to the South Island economy and the Te Tauihu tribes. Following the earthquake, Ngai Tahu, for residential zoning only, built 4,000 lots for the citizens of Christchurch. Wigram, for an example, Ngai Tahu contributed 30,000 on civil infrastructure, 30 million in civil infrastructure, 35 million in development contributions. The GST tax revenue for the Crown and local government has been substantial. Te Tauihu iwi have no capacity to match. However, what we do understand is their parent iwi reside in the North Island within Entity C. Ngāti Toa, Ngāti Tama, Rarawa, Te Atiawa and Rangatane all have their kin iwi in Entity C, and that is where they belong and where their natural groupings are.
Dr. Te Maire Tau, I'm just letting you know we have 3 minutes left and we've already got about 4 questions, please.
Right. So those are fundamentally the key points. What we need to say is our tribe will commit to making this work, but we do have concerns with working with the Northern iwi because despite the settlements, despite the memorandums of understanding between our tribes, there is continual litigation. This is certainly not a recipe of good governance for ourselves in Entity D. I think that's enough, but what is important finally to note is that we have consulted since 2001 with all councils in the South Island. There was a commitment by those councils within the Ngai Tahu takiwā to the takiwā of Ngai Tahu. The Northern councils opted to choose Entity C. I think that's enough for us now. Kia ora.
Kia ora. So members, the questions would be Rachel Brooking, Eugenie Sage, Maureen Pugh, and then Simon Court. If we can keep the questions short, please.
Thank you, Dr. Tau. Just quickly on this takiwā issue of thinking of the southern bit, we've heard today from Dunedin City Council who are saying, and I think all the southern councils say they would prefer an entity that was Southland and Otago.
Yeah.
What are your views on that?
The tribe's macro view is that we need to see the South Island and our territory as one complete whole. We think the economics and the financing for this makes better sense.
Honourable Eugenie.
Tēnā koe, Dr. Tau. Thank you for the submission. In terms of rangatiratanga, I haven't heard the Te Tauihu iwi say that they would have any expectation of rangatiratanga over the takiwā of Ngai Tahu. The bill provides for a statement of Te Mana o Te Wai to go to the Water Services entity. I had assumed that the Te Tauihu iwi would only do that for their rohe, and Ngai Tahu would do it for the rest if they became part of Entity D. Am I wrong in thinking that?
The history of litigation between both tribes would tell you differently, and the boundaries are quite clear. Our view is those boundaries are not respected, but what the tribe has said is that the rights and interests of those iwi have been recognised in 2 memorandums.
No, I understand that, but there is the Marlborough District Council, Tasman District Council, Te Ihu want to be part of Entity D. If there was a change, surely the rights and interests of Te Ihu would only be in relation to their rohe, not Ngai Tahu's. And so it would just be their Te Mana o Te Wai statement would only be for the top of the south.
That has not been the case.
Okay.
That is not the case.
All right. And then quick question I made. Your submission notes that and agree it's confusing to have different definitions of mana whenua in different legislation. So why are you suggesting that the RMA definition be used rather than the one that's in the bill?
It was a matter of degree, and it's a matter of degree in our comfort with the use of iwi there, because in the South Island rohe, in our takiwā, there is only one iwi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Maureen Pugh.
Oh, thank you. Dr. Tau, I'm still failing to see the need to separate the top of the south from the bottom of the south and Entity D, because what we're talking about is a service delivery to residents and ratepayers, which, and I know your view is probably different, but that seems to be the most efficient across the South Island. So what difference will it make in terms of the responsibilities that Ngai Tahu has for its rohe compared to others in the top of the south, when actually what we're talking about is a governance model for the delivery of water services to the population of the South Island?
Yep. We've stated in our submission that we are quite aware of the service delivery needs of those townships just on the borderline. We are prepared to meet that. Our viewpoint will be different. We made an agreement with the Crown on our takiwā and our rangatiratanga, and the agreements back in those periods and at that particular time was that we hold rangatiratanga, which we equate close to the Crown sovereignty, and the Crown committed to cooperation with us. This is why it is a fundamental reason why we are supporting the Water Services Bill.
Sorry, I'm not sure that that's covered my question.
Okay. We are quite prepared, because we understand, as we said in our submission, to meet the service delivery needs of Ward 7 Murchison, I think. But our viewpoint is different from yours, in that for governance, we see rangatiratanga, and we are the sole tribe with that in our legislation, is requiring the Crown to have governance with us as the priority within our takiwā, which underpins that legislation. And that's the agreement we had with all of the councils in the South Island when we negotiated 2021.
So in follow-up to that, how do you anticipate, in response to the question I asked Mayor Leggett, in situations when they're in an emergency management situation, how these entities are going to be able to work together to provide that service delivery and repair and upgrades that are going to be needed in emergency states of emergency?
Yeah, and I saw reference to that. The tribe is always committed to supporting during emergencies, those types of situations. But this is simply a matter of design and organisational design and planning for these entities, and it has to be factored in. And ultimately, this is trial and error.
Trial and error.
Thank you for that. Simon Court, last question, please.
Thank you. I'm just wondering, does the Ngai Tahu claim for water rights in the High Court, is that still proceeding? Or is this okay? So is this proposed governance arrangement for the 3 waters entities, does that make that claim unnecessary, or is the claim separate?
They're separate.
Okay, and that's because we've had a few questions about property rights over water, and I'm wondering, do you think that it would be sensible for other entities, private landowners, say, who have resource consents, to be able to convert their consents into property rights in the same way as Ngai Tahu is seeking to have their property rights recognised?
Well, that's wrong. We have not claimed property rights in our statement of claim.
And actually, I think that question is out of scope because it doesn't pertain directly to this bill. It is a hearing before the court. So thank you very much, Dr. Tau. We are out of time. Thank you, members. We are going to